Across the desolate plains of Nebraska, a German shepherd sat motionless beside an abandoned gas station. For 4 long years, every day from sunrise to dusk, he didn't beg, didn't bark. He simply stared down the road, as if waiting for something no one could understand. People called him the ghost dog. But the truth was, he was waiting for a boy, a promise, a family that once meant everything, and in those tired eyes there was a kind of love that refused to die. Before we dive deeper into this heartwarming story, I kindly ask you to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and ring the bell so you never miss another touching story like this one. Now, let's return to a cold Nebraska morning, where the wind carried more than just dust. It carried a memory. The wind moved through the plains of Nebraska like an old song, soft, tired, and familiar. Just off Highway 83, past the last row of cracked billboards and sun-bleached fences, stood what was left of a forgotten gas station. Its pumps rusted, its windows boarded up, and its sign faded into a ghost of its former self. No one stopped here anymore. No one except him. A German shepherd with tired eyes and a coat dulled by time sat near the edge of the lot. His name, unknown to most, had once been Sam. For 4 long years, he returned to the same spot every morning and stayed until dusk. He didn't beg, didn't bark. He simply watched the road, always the road, as if expecting someone. People had noticed him. The locals called him the ghost dog. Truckers passing through left scraps. An old woman from the diner down the road brought water during the dry spells. But no one got close. Not really. If someone tried, Sam would stand, walk a few paces away, and sit down again, always facing the horizon. Winters came hard in this part of the country, the kind of cold that cracked bones and silenced sound. Yet even when snow buried the lot, and wind howled like it wanted to take the skin off the world, Sam stayed. Curled beside the building's wall, a silent witness to the passing seasons. No one understood why. The gas station had nothing left, not even shelter worth staying for. But he waited, day after day, like the pavement itself had promised him something. To most, he was just a stray who wouldn't leave. But if you looked closer, if you watched the way his ears twitched at the sound of tires, or how his eyes lit for a moment when a red sedan drove by, you might think otherwise. Somewhere deep in that quiet, dusty frame was a memory still burning. He wasn't waiting for food. He was waiting for someone who mattered. Before the gas station, before the silence, and before the waiting, there was a boy and his dog. Sam had not always been a ghost. There was a time when his coat was shiny, when his steps were light, and when the sound of a boy's laughter echoed through a modest home tucked into a quiet Kansas neighborhood. The boy's name was Will. He had soft brown hair, eyes full of wonder, and a spirit that never sat still. From the moment Sam came home as a wriggling puppy in a cardboard box, the two were inseparable. Will named him. He fed him, trained him, even slept curled up beside him on the floor when Sam cried at night. They grew together like twin branches of the same tree, chasing summer afternoons, leaping through piles of autumn leaves, and racing across the backyard as if the world had no fences. Sam had been more than a pet. He had been a companion, a protector, a secret keeper. He knew when Will was happy. He knew when Will was scared. And Will, in return, trusted Sam more than anyone. The boy's parents, Margaret and Tom, had once joked that Sam was the family's heartbeat. Tom, with his calloused hands and weather-worn face, always took a quiet moment to scratch Sam's ears before heading to work. Margaret would leave a small corner of her toast for him every morning, her way of saying, "You're part of us." Then came the weekend that changed everything. It was early spring, and the family had taken a short trip to visit Tom's brother in Nebraska. They packed the car with snacks, blankets, and Sam's favorite toy. Sam rode in the back seat beside Will, his head resting in the boy's lap, eyes half closed, content with the hum of the highway and the occasional scent drifting through the open window. The rain came suddenly, dark clouds rolling in like an uninvited guest. The temperature dropped, the road slickened. Margaret, behind the wheel, slowed the car. Tom reached forward to adjust the heat, and Will leaned his head against Sam's side. Then headlights, too fast, too close. A truck veered across the divider, its horns screaming through the downpour. Margaret swerved, tires skidding, the car spinning into the shoulder. Time slowed. Metal crumpled, glass shattered. Sam was thrown hard against the seat, his vision blurred by the whiplash of motion and the explosion of noise. When the car finally stopped, it was on its side, half off the road. Smoke rose in the air, the acrid bite of oil and burning wires. Voices shouted from somewhere, urgent, distant. Sirens followed, their wails swallowed by the storm. Sam staggered to his feet, dazed, ears ringing. He could see Will, blood on his forehead, unconscious, being lifted out of the wreck by strangers in reflective jackets. Margaret was limp in the arms of a paramedic. Tom's face, pale and stunned, turned towards Sam once, just once, before he was pulled away. Then, hands reached for Sam, rough hands, a voice trying to calm him, but panic had taken hold. He twisted, yanked, pulled away, and ran. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to find them. He ran through the field, across wet gravel and broken twigs, down the slope toward the highway. He barked once, loud, desperate, but the wind carried it away. He kept running, each step further from the wreck, further from what he knew. The rain soaked his fur, flattened his ears, his chest burned, but he didn't stop. He searched along the road, sniffing every tire mark, every patch of disturbed earth, until his legs could carry him no farther. That was when he saw it. An old gas station, quiet and still, sitting like a sentinel in the mist. He collapsed beneath the awning, his body shaking from exhaustion, his mind too tired to understand what had happened. But even then, something inside him refused to give up. Every time a car passed, he would lift his head. Every time a door opened in the distance, his ears would twitch. Every time a voice echoed through the wind, he would wait, just a little longer. Because the last thing he remembered, the very last thing before everything went black, was Will's hand on his neck and the warmth of being needed. So he waited. One day, then another, and another, until days blurred into weeks, and weeks became years. Henry Wallace hadn't planned to stop in that town. He rarely planned much of anything anymore. Retirement had come quietly 2 years prior, ending 4 decades behind a camera lens. He had traveled across the country in a modest RV ever since, chasing stories that no one asked him to tell, stories that lingered in forgotten corners, where life didn't rush and silence still had meaning. That morning, the air in Nebraska had been crisp with early frost. Henry had pulled off Highway 83 to refill his thermos with coffee and stretch his legs. As he turned into the empty lot of the old gas station, something caught his eye, a shape, still as stone, near the edge of the crumbling pavement. At first, he thought it was a statue. The dog didn't move, didn't glance his way, just sat there, ears forward, eyes fixed on the long stretch of road, as if waiting for it to speak. His fur was coarse, flecked with dust and time. his posture both proud and worn. There was something almost holy in his stillness. Henry stepped out of his RV slowly, not wanting to break whatever sacred thing he had stumbled upon. He stayed at a distance, observing, the way he used to when capturing a war widow's grief or the last light on a fisherman's face. His instincts whispered, this was not just a dog, this was a story. He raised his camera, an old Nikon, battered and familiar, and framed the shot. Click. The sound was quiet, but the dog's ears twitched. Still, he didn't move. Henry took another photo, then another. A wide shot, the gas station behind him. A close-up, just the dog's eyes, deep and clouded with something older than years. Back in the RV, Henry sat at his tiny desk and opened his laptop. He uploaded the images, his fingers moving slowly, reverently. There was no caption at first. He just stared at the pictures, trying to understand what they stirred in him. He hadn't felt this in years. Not since the funeral of his wife, not since the war-torn faces of Bosnia in '95, or the quiet courage of a mother he once photographed burying her son. It was the ache of meaning. And it came unexpectedly from a German shepherd beside a gas station. Later that evening, with the dog still watching the road and the sky turning soft with dusk, Henry logged into his old photo blog. He hadn't used it in months, but the words came easily this time. He waits, every day, same spot. For what or who, I don't know, but I've seen devotion before, and this is deeper than instinct. There's history in those eyes. Pain, maybe, but more than that, hope. The kind that doesn't fade, no matter how long it waits. He uploaded 3 photos, gave the post a simple title, The Ghost by the Road. Then he closed his laptop and stepped outside again, watching as the first stars began to flicker through the fading light. The next morning, the blog had over 1,000 views. By noon, 10,000. Emails flooded his inbox. People asking where, asking who, asking how they could help. Animal rescue volunteers, local reporters, even a young woman from Oregon who swore she had seen the dog 4 years earlier near the site of a car crash. Henry didn't know what he had started. He only knew it was no longer just his story. That night, he went back through the photos again. One image stopped him. Sam mid-blink as a red car passed behind him. For just a moment, Henry had captured something unguarded in the dog's face. A flicker of expectation. He wasn't just remembering, he was believing. Henry reached out to a local shelter with the photos and location. They said they'd been aware of the dog for years, but had never been able to catch him. He refused to be captured, refused to be taken. He didn't act like a stray. He acted like he had somewhere to be. Henry nodded, even though no one was there to see. Of course he did. He wasn't lost. He was loyal. The next day, a message came from a teenager in Kansas. The boy had seen the photo on social media. Said it looked like the dog he'd lost in a crash 4 years ago. He said the dog's name was Sam. The sun was setting over Kansas when Will Everett saw the photo. He hadn't been looking for anything, just scrolling mindlessly through a friend's post, clicking past videos and news links and birthday announcements. But then it appeared. The image of a dog sitting beside a broken-down gas station, staring down an empty road. There was nothing extraordinary about the background, no filters or captions that screamed for attention. It was the eyes. Even through the screen, even after all those years, he knew. His breath caught in his chest. His fingers trembled slightly as he clicked the photo. It led to a blog post by someone named Henry Wallace. The man had written about a dog who waited every day at the same spot for 4 years. No leash, no collar, just loyalty and time. Will read the post 3 times before letting himself believe what his heart already knew. He opened the drawer beside his bed and pulled out an old photo, faded now, its corners curling. A boy, 10 years old, his smile wide and lopsided, stood next to a young German shepherd with ears too big for his head. The dog was mid-jump, his mouth open in what could only be described as joy. Sam, that had been his name, and he hadn't said it out loud in years. Downstairs, Margaret was setting the table. The clatter of dishes and the soft hum of the radio filled the air. Will descended the steps slowly, holding the photo like it was a relic. He placed it gently on the counter. His mother turned, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes fell on the picture, and for a moment, she didn't breathe. "Where did you find that?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Will showed her the post. Margaret read every word with a hand over her mouth, her eyes growing glassy as she stared at the dog in the photographs. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, softly, "He's still waiting." Tom came in from the garage, wiping grease from his hands. He looked at their faces, then the laptop screen. He said nothing. He only reached out, placed a calloused hand on his son's shoulder, and nodded once. There had never been a funeral, no closure. After the accident, Sam had simply vanished. Emergency workers assumed he had run off, injured or worse. They had searched for days, put up signs, called every shelter within 2 counties, but no one had found him. Until now. Margaret's voice broke the silence. "We're going." Tom didn't question it, neither did Will. They packed within the hour, throwing overnight bags and a blanket into the back seat of the car. Margaret brought a tin of dog biscuits that had sat untouched in the pantry for years. It was almost midnight when they pulled out of the driveway, heading north across the state line into Nebraska. The road stretched ahead of them, long and dark. None of them slept. Every mile carried weight, each signpost a reminder of how far they'd come and how far he had waited. They crossed into Nebraska under a sky full of stars. The road narrowed, then curved until the landscape flattened into golden fields sleeping under moonlight. It was just past dawn when they turned onto the final stretch. Tom slowed the car. There, at the edge of the old gas station lot, sat a familiar figure. Still, watching. The car rolled to a stop. No one spoke. Margaret opened her door first. Her hands trembled as she stepped onto the gravel. Tom followed, slower, eyes locked on the dog ahead. Will climbed out last, taller now, older, but in that moment, just a boy again. Sam stood. His ears twitched, his body stiffened, caught between caution and instinct. Margaret called his name, not loudly, just a whisper carried by morning breeze. Sam didn't move, then Will stepped forward. No sudden movement, just a quiet offering of presence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a frayed old tennis ball, the last one they'd played with before the crash. He dropped it gently on the ground and waited. Sam's eyes flicked to the ball, then to the boy. Then, like something breaking free inside him, he moved. One step, then another, then a run, and in the space of a breath, the waiting was over. The moment Sam reached them, something in the air shifted, like the final note of a long-forgotten song echoing back after years of silence. His paws kicked up small clouds of dust as he closed the space between memory and reality. When he reached Will, he didn't leap or bark. He simply pressed his head into the boy's chest and stood still. Will dropped to his knees, arms wrapped tightly around Sam's neck, holding him as if afraid he might vanish again. The dog didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He leaned in, eyes closed, his body melting into the embrace like rain returning to the earth. Margaret knelt beside them, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch his fur. She whispered his name under her breath, once, then again, as if saying it aloud might make it more real. Tom stood behind them, quiet and steady, his weathered face unreadable except for the way his hand reached down to rest gently on Sam's back. They stayed that way for several minutes, no one rushing, no one speaking. There were no words large enough for a moment like that. Only the sound of the wind, the distant hum of early traffic, and the quiet rhythm of Sam's breathing as he stood surrounded by the people he had never stopped waiting for. Eventually, Tom rose and opened the back door of the car. Will guided Sam gently inside. The dog moved with hesitation, pausing at the threshold, eyes scanning the interior like a soldier returning from war. But he stepped in. That small act, so simple, so ordinary, felt like a miracle. The ride home was silent. Sam lay curled beside Will, his body tense at first, eyes darting to every passing sign and movement. Each bump in the road made him shift. Each gust of wind made his ears flick. But Will's hand stayed on his side, firm and steady, a constant reminder that he was no longer alone. When they arrived, the house felt different. It wasn't the home Sam had known. After the accident, Margaret and Tom had sold the old place, unable to bear the memories tucked into every corner. The new house was bigger, brighter, but unfamiliar. Sam stood at the threshold, unmoving, his paws rooted like stone. Will didn't force him. He sat beside Sam on the porch, waiting. Minutes passed. The morning sun warmed the steps. A bird landed nearby, chirping softly. A breeze carried the faint scent of dry grass and something baking in the kitchen. Then, slowly, Sam stepped inside. He walked cautiously, each room a puzzle of smells and sounds. The furniture was different. The walls held no scent he remembered. But Will was here, and Margaret, and Tom. That was enough, for now. In the corner of the living room, an old dog bed had been placed, clean, soft, with a blanket tucked beside it. Will guided Sam toward it, sitting beside him as the dog sniffed and circled. But Sam didn't lie down. Instead, he moved toward the back door, curled in the corner beside it, and rested his head on his paws. Still waiting. That night, Sam refused to eat. He paced the hallway, ears alert, body tense. The sounds of the television startled him. A door creaking open made him jump. When Will reached out a hand, Sam lowered his head, not out of fear, but uncertainty. The next morning was the same, and the next. It wasn't rejection. It was caution born from 4 years of surviving in silence. He didn't know yet if he was safe, if this peace would last. He had waited so long that moving forward felt like betrayal, like letting go might mean losing them again. But they didn't rush him. They didn't expect him to trust overnight. Will slept on the floor beside him. Margaret left food near his bed, but never pushed it closer. Tom walked quietly through the house, careful not to startle him. And Sam watched. He watched the boy who had grown taller, the woman who still spoke gently, the man who had never said much, but now knelt every evening to whisper, "Good boy." Little by little, something softened. On the 7th night, just after midnight, Sam stood and walked to Will's bed. He paused. Then, with effort, he climbed up, curled at the foot, and let out a deep, tired sigh. Will stirred, half asleep, and reached down, his fingers finding Sam's fur. Neither of them moved again. Not until morning. The seasons turned gently after that. Sam never returned to the gas station. He never needed to. The horizon he had watched for so long now lived inside the home where love had waited, quietly, like a light left on in the dark. Each morning, he woke before the rest of the house, padding softly to the back door, not to leave, but to sit and watch the sunrise. Will would often find him there, tail flicking once or twice as the light crept across the floor. Sometimes the boy sat beside him, no words needed. They had spent too long in silence to fear it now. Sam ate again, slept again. He followed Will from room to room, not with urgency, but with quiet assurance. Trust was no longer something fragile. It had taken root, slowly, deeply. There were still moments, flashes of memory in the flick of his ears when thunder rumbled, or the way his body tensed when a door slammed. But they passed more quickly now, like distant shadows instead of present threats. The neighborhood came to know him as the quiet dog with knowing eyes. He didn't chase balls or bark at squirrels. He simply watched, listened, and stayed close. As if he understood that life wasn't measured by how loudly you loved, but how long you were willing to wait for it to return. One evening, as autumn brushed golden leaves across the yard, Sam laid beside Will on the porch. The boy leaned back against the railing, a book in his lap, his hand resting on Sam's back. The wind was soft, the light warm, and the house behind them glowed with quiet life. And in that stillness, something settled. Sam had come home, not just in body, but in spirit. He had waited through storm and silence, fear and fading hope. And in the end, he had not been forgotten. He had been found. Because love, real love, does not vanish. It remembers, and it waits.